I've checked out this page before. It's front page. This is the end of California, and I've lived in California for, well, it's best just to say all my life. I've lived in California all my life. I hate it here. I absolutely despise it. It used to be a little bit better, especially when my parents were bringing us up as kids, but me and my brothers as kids, but it's just gotten so much worse. So much worse. But this is the end of California. The end for California.
Picture a treehouse deep in a redwood forest north of San Francisco on a December evening in 2025. Christmas lights glow between the trees. A 30-foot abominable snowman with red glowing eyes stands in the clearing below. Janelle Monáe is performing for a private audience of tech executives. The host of the party is Chris Larson, the cryptocurrency billionaire who founded Ripple. Inside the treehouse, the governor of California is cold and hungry, and the fourth richest man on the planet is cornering him about a tax. Sergey Brin, the co-founder of Google, has just been told that a labor union called the SEIU, United Healthcare Workers West, is about to put a measure on the November 2026 ballot. The measure will impose a 5% tax on the personal net worth of every Californian who possesses over $1 billion in assets as of January 1st, 2026. Brin is worth approximately $272 billion. So the math is simple. If the measure passes and Brin is still in California on January 1st, the state of California will send him a bill for roughly $13.5 billion. Brin is standing next to his girlfriend, the wellness influencer Carolyn Gilbert Soto. They are explaining to Governor Newsom that they are leaving the state. Newsom would later complain to associates about the encounter for months. He had caught a lingering cold from the couple. The encounter was also the first wave of what would become the most expensive ballot fight in California history. 6 days later, on January 1st, 2026, at 11:59 p.m. Pacific time, 6 of the wealthiest men on the planet were no longer Californians. Sergey Brin, Larry Page, his Google co-founder, Peter Thiel, the venture capitalist who funded.
And the problem is, when that takes place, guess what happens? They when the people with the money leave California, normally the industries do too as well. They leave as well. Why would they want to pay a tax? It's always about avoiding responsibility. Well, not responsibility. It's not their responsibility to carry the nation's well-being or the state's well-being on their back. It's not the richest people in a state. They're not responsible to make sure the state remains afloat. They're not. And nobody wants to be taxed more than anyone else. It should be a flat percentage across the board, because 1% of what I make is not even measurable to, I can't even make in a year what 1% of them being taxed. Increasing that tax to 5%, of course they're going to leave somewhere else. But that's the thing. It's just like, if you're going to personally call people out, it's just going to make things worse in the long run. And that's one of the big downsides of like California always being, I don't know the best way to say it. I mean, the state of California is absolutely retarded. I don't know about that taxing the wealth. It's just not going to work. When the wealthy's in the end, the only class that ever actually gets targeted, and why that class is taxed so much, is the middle class. Because the millionaires, the billionaires can up and move immediately. They don't need to worry about, oh, I have a livelihood, I have a family, I have all this I'm responsible for. No, they already have enough money to live comfortably. Millionaires for probably a year or two, billionaires for the rest of their life. They don't need to worry about what an everyday man has to go through. So in the end, the people that always get hit hard are like the middle class people, because they're the easiest demographic to target for like taxes, because we can't go anywhere. We can't. That's nice of me to consider myself middle class. I'm below middle class, but I still. Yeah, but I'd still get hit with the ramifications of it, even though my tax dollars don't really add anything to the system, but I don't take advantage of the systems that's there, which I probably could. But yeah, these people, of course, they're going to up and leave. They have no responsibility to the state of California.
of Facebook, Travis Kalanick,
Hello,
founder of
MG.
Uber, Don Hinckley, the Los Angeles auto lender, and Mark Zuckerberg, the CEO of Meta. Their combined net worth was hundreds of billions of dollars. By the time the clock struck midnight in Sacramento, billionaires had filed flight plans out of San Jose, Burbank, and San Francisco. Trust documents were signed in Reno, Austin, and Miami.
I think these people forget that the second you tax the rich, they leave, because unlike middle class, they have all the options. It'll just be negative for everyone in the end. Yeah, it just, they have the affordability to live anywhere. And most of the time, they have multiple houses. They probably still have that house, but they don't actually register to live there. They register to live at one of their other mansions across the state, or just live in a whole nother nation. Just live in a whole nother nation. But yeah, they have the ability to. They have the ability to. It's just crazy. It sounds great in a perfect world, but that's the thing. Our world is far from perfect. Yeah, it absolutely is. It absolutely is. There's a place for social programs and all that, but you can't expect people who have gotten to the top to start to worry about those at the bottom. Sure, they do like fundraisers. Sure, they give to because in the end, a lot of the stuff they give to is all tax deductible, which allows them to actually recoup some of what they spent, so they can hold on to more. I mean, heck, I used to work in a location where they did an auction. The rich farmers of the area would buy a tractor, put it up for auction, buy the tractor at auction, and then the expense to buy the tractor originally is tax deductible, and then the amount they paid at auction is tax deductible. So in the end, they're still paying a lot of money, but what a tractor that originally cost $30,000 now probably only costs them $10,000 out of pocket, because they're recouping a lot of what they spent because of fundraisers and things like that. There's a lot of that goes about, and it seems schemy, but everyone who makes money wants to keep their money. And anyone who says otherwise is lying to you. Everyone wants to hold on to as much as they can, unless they have enough to live on for the rest of their life. Then it's just like, yeah, they could easily give it away.
Tax attorneys worked through the holiday week. According to venture capitalist Chamath Palihapitiya, $700 billion in personal wealth left the state of California in the months following the announcement of this measure. The measure is called the 2026 Billionaire Tax Act. The official designation is Initiative 25-0028. The proponent of record is a man named George M. Yin. The actual sponsor is SEIU United Healthcare Workers West, a union representing 120,000 California healthcare workers. The official campaign is called Billionaire Tax Now. The opposition is led by...
So, I hate unions. I understand that they were there to serve a purpose, but right now unions have become political, where it's the person who's the union organizer is just trying to find a way to pat in their pockets. In a lot of cases, it has been discovered that companies will pay the union leaders in order to get preferential policies pushed through that help the companies more than the people the unions are supposed to be representing. I absolutely despise unions. And I understand there are always those people who don't have a voice to speak for themselves. The problem is, someone like me who's used to going to my boss and demanding more because, well, I know how hard I work, I can no longer do that. In a union, I don't have that ability to. Why? Because now I'm like everybody else. I'm just like the worker that falls asleep on the job, because that everyone's represented the same exact way.
A brand new political organization called Building a Better California, founded by Sergey Brin
I personally believe
and
there
former
should
Google
be a
CEO
balance
Eric
between
Schmidt.
both
That
capitalism and
organization has
socialism
already raised
and a
over
healthy
$80
society.
million.
Yeah, that
Brin
absolutely
alone
makes
has
sense.
contributed approximately
to be.
$57 million, making him the second largest individual political donor in California this election cycle.
But the thing that angers a lot of people here in the United States. So I work a full-time job. There are people who get benefits from the state or the government that make more than me. They don't work a day in their life, and they get paid more than me. that's where a lot of people seem to have issues. I think because there should be food for kids. There should be food for those who are unable to work, but it should just be like the military rations type stuff. You know, the most generic piece of bread that has all the nutrients someone needs, not all this extra stuff. Unions ruined West Bengal completely to the point workers spend more time protesting than working. Yeah, because it's the ones who don't want to work for the living or want to cut corners are the ones who are being who benefit primarily from a union, not the hard workers. The hard workers get used by the union as a poster child, when it's the ones who don't want to work are the ones who are actually reaping the most from a union.
Trailing only Tom Steyer. The campaign has not even officially begun, and it is already on track to be one of the most expensive ballot fights in American history. This is the story of how a public sector union representing 120,000 California healthcare workers convinced the world's wealthiest people to flee the wealthiest state in the union before the tax was even a tax. A story of why over $700 billion has already moved across state lines. A separate story about what happens when a state government with the highest taxes in America runs the largest budget deficit in America while losing population for a 5th straight year. And the story of November 3rd, 2026. And this is a story of why the man who fled the Soviet Union with 2 suitcases at 6 years old just told the New York Times in writing that California is becoming exactly what he and his family ran from. This is Front Page. Initiative 25-0024 is 47 pages long. It was drafted by SEIU, United Healthcare Workers West, a labor union with 120,000 healthcare worker members in coordination with 3 academic economists, a team of state-level
The funny thing is you look at these people. Where the heck are they? There's too many of them. Whatever.
Initiative 25-0024.
You see all those people, and they're all the usual suspects.
A labor union
Every
with 120,000 healthcare
is the usual suspects. These people would be better off applying for jobs or actually working their jobs. But no, these people are nothing but tools who are used by the people in the unions to prove they have power. I hate this crap. The place I work, it has, so the unions used to be a mandatory thing that you paid into. So my mother complained about it for a long time till you could opt out. But where I work, it costs $86 a month to support the unions in order to be in a part of the union, which I think is astronomically ridiculous. I bet like that no. I need that money. I'm not paying a load of people who don't work for a living or just want to be there to pretend like they represent me, who don't care or know who I am. No, they're not gonna have a say. And that's what's funny. It's just like so many people pay in thinking on this idea that these people got your back when they don't. These people don't care about you. They care about their organization. That's what always I go back to. Hate people, love the individual. This is nothing but a collective of people who have no concept of what they're actually doing. But you sit down and talk to an individual, one of these people here will be like, yeah, I don't like how much of my taxes are being taken out. I'm tired of working so much and then feeling like I don't have any, I have nothing for it. I live impoverished. I'm paycheck to paycheck. I'm chronically in debt. Those are the things you would hear these people talking about individually. But the thing is, they're promised this fictional belief that, you know what? We're going to have the billionaires pay for everything. You know, the billionaires who can literally leave at any point in time. At any point in time. Why? Because they're billionaires. They don't have to worry about anything. And so many freaking people just don't actually think that way. They just want to think about, oh, I won't have to pay as much in taxes because the rich and wealthy will cover it. But that's not the thing. That's not how it happens. In the end, it should just be a blatant tax across the board. Social programs are in effect to aid those who need them. The thing is, we need a massive social overhaul because with how much fraud is going into effect is insane. The fact that there is a whole act passed in California to stop a YouTuber from showing fraud is absolutely insane. Why? Because we already know who's in charge or taking a cut of the fraud. But yeah, California's absolutely destroyed. This mob is like millions of head, but no brain. There is a brain, but it's pocketing a ton of cash for its actions. Working on the sympathies of people. Because that's the thing. If I was told, like, there would be a way for me not to pay much in tax, it'd be like, that sounds nice. Tell me how. But if they started to tell me, I was just like, oh, the billionaires, my brain would shut down. It's like, nope. Yeah, you've already lost me. You've already lost me. The millionaires, nope, you've already lost me. They're going to leave. They're going to go somewhere else. They don't need to work for a living. At least the way a normal salaryman does.
Worker members, in coordination with 3 academic economists, a team of state-level constitutional lawyers, a man named George M. Yin, who was listed as the official proponent on the Attorney General's filing. The mechanics of the tax are unusual. Most income taxes apply to money a person earned in a given year.
Unions
Billionaire
are
tax
politics
does
here.
not. The measure applies to net worth, which means everything a person owns minus what they owe. Assets covered include publicly traded stock, privately held company shares, art, jewelry, intellectual property, trust holdings, partnership interests, businesses, and securities. Real estate, pensions, and standard retirement accounts are all exempt from the calculation. Liabilities like mortgages, business debt, and lines of credit can be subtracted from the total. The tax rate is 5% on every dollar of net worth above $1 billion. There is also a smaller tax for people worth between $1 billion and $1.1 billion. The bill comes due in 2027. Taxpayers can spread the payments across 5 years, but they pay a deferral charge to do so. A founder with $10 billion in net worth would owe California $450 million. Scaled to $100 billion, the same founder owes California $4.5 billion. Sergey Brin, worth $272 billion, would owe California roughly $13.5 billion. So where does that money go? 90% of the revenue is set aside for one specific purpose: healthcare. Specifically, Medi-Cal, which is California's version of Medicaid, the public insurance program for low-income residents. The remaining 10% goes to administering the tax, public education, and food assistance programs. The pitch from the union is straightforward. Hospitals across the state are closing, federal cuts to Medi-Cal are pending, and reimbursement rates have fallen below the cost of providing care. The 200 wealthiest
How do I view the $130 billion high-speed rail project in California? You mean the project that is like, I don't even think it's a mile long. Get that in your mind. 130, I think it's actually $170 billion on a high-speed rail, which was supposed to go from LA to San Francisco originally. And then after they made a ton of money, they spent a lot of money, that got changed. And then it was supposed to go from like, what was it? San Francisco to Bakersfield. And then it got redone. It was like, but the billionaires will pitch in and then it'll go. The fact that that's all just massive fraud is insane. Where did all that money go? Who was the contractor behind it all? Oh, it happened to be someone that Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, knew. That's who was contracted to actually get this done. That's why he was paid an astronomical amount of money. The whole thing is just corruption, blatant corruption. I mean, it's funny because I remember going to school while I was in college at the time, but someone was removed from the school board because he was a construction worker, not a construction worker, but he owned a construction company. And he literally strong-armed every single school in the district to utilize his construction company, which was against the law. He ended up getting fined. I don't think he served time, but he got a massive fine. A massive fine. But because yeah, it was illegal. It's absolutely illegal. But here they are. Here are the governor of California doing the exact same thing. You have mayors, governors. Everyone's just trying to quid pro quo. Trying to just do favors for their friends. Oh, you know what? You can charge whatever you want. I'm the governor. And you know what? The next time I run for office or anything, just add it to my fundraiser. Half of what you earn from the contract I'm selling you, add it to my fundraiser. That's literally how it works. It's just about trying to pocket as much as they can for themselves. It's just blatant corruption.
Californians can afford to pay 5% of their wealth to keep the emergency rooms open. And then there's the trap. The drafters of Initiative 25-0024 anticipated the exact scenario that has already unfolded. They added a residency provision designed to prevent the wealthy from simply leaving. The provision works like this. Anyone who was a California resident on January 1st, 2026 owes the tax, even if they have moved out of state by the time the bill arrives in 2027. Bryn can be sitting in his new home on the Nevada side of Lake Tahoe in 2027, and California will still send him a bill for $13.5 billion. So will every other billionaire who lived in California on January 1st of this year. Critics call the provision a Hotel California clause, after the Eagles song in which guests can check out but can never leave. Constitutional scholars from the Cato Institute, the Pacific Legal Foundation, and the law schools at Stanford and UCLA have argued the provision violates the Commerce Clause and the constitutional right to travel. The Tax Foundation has argued the provision is, quote, highly susceptible to legal challenge. Supporters of the measure argue that residency cutoff mirrors existing federal expiration tax provisions and will survive judicial review. Legal questions aside, the bigger problem is the marketing of the tax itself. The 2026 Billionaire Tax Act is being sold as a one-time, temporary, single-year levy. Supporters insist the language.
Oh, what did California did to Nick Shirley? Sorry, I don't know what they did. Nick Shirley went to he found fraud in California, and of course, the big cities like LA, and he pointed it out. And California basically said that if you're targeting minorities, organizations in account of fraud, you're basically targeting Nick Shirley because he found a lot of migrant fraud going on, like he did in Minnesota. He found the same exact thing happening in California, and they passed a law where you're not allowed to report on it, and if you do, the places you're reporting on can countersue. So if I was to go down to LA and find a vacant building that apparently is reaping a ton, like a couple $1,000s in tax bonuses because of their probably welfare, they're a welfare type of building, I could get in trouble because I went to go and report on that fraud. I would get in trouble because I am doing the due diligence as an American citizen to call out people who are bad actors, which he did, and now he can be countersued for doing that. That's literally what it is. It's insane. It is insane.
The initiative limits a collection to a single round of payments. Section 4 of the measure adds a new section to Article 13 of the California Constitution. It does not contain language barring the legislator from imposing a similar tax in the future. The measure also fails to bar SEIU, Union Healthcare Workers West, from sponsoring a sequel ballot measure in 2028, 2030, or any year thereafter. According to the Tax Foundation analysis published in January of 2026, quote, others are skeptical that the wealth tax would be allowed to expire. This pattern is older than California itself. The federal income tax was sold to Americans in 1913 as a temporary measure. The top rate was 7%. It applied to the wealthiest 1% of households. The temporary tax has now been collected for 113 years, and the top federal rate has been as high as 94%. The alternative minimum tax was passed in 1969 in response to 155 high-income households who legally owed $0 in federal tax. By 2017, the AMT applied to 5.5 million American taxpayers, almost none of whom were the wealthiest households the law was originally designed to capture. The federal telephone excise tax was passed in 1898 to fund the Spanish.
That's the sad part. It's just like a lot of stuff are, just like with unions. There are a lot of things that are passed in good faith. They are permanent solutions to temporary problems. We have had so many problems come into light because a permanent thing was put into place for a temporary problem. And what was the temporary problem? It was the fact that workers weren't allowed a voice. They were easily being misused. They were being overworked. And if they didn't do exactly what was being told of them, they were terminated. So unions were put into place. And that was prior to HR. And now we have HR and unions. And the problem is, so if you have a work at a place that has both union and HR, odds are you can't get fired. Because if HR wants you gone, the union will have your back just because they don't like each other. And if the union wants you gone, HR will have your back just because they don't like each other. And it can lead into a massive lawsuit either way. Either way. It's crazy.
American War. The war ended in 5 months. The phone tax was collected for 108 years and was finally repealed in 2006. American consumers paid a war tax on every long-distance call for more than a century after the war was created to fund had ended. Closer to home, in 2012, California's voters passed Proposition 30, which raised the top state income tax rate from 10.3% to 13.3%. The measure was sold as a temporary 7-year increase to fund public schools during the Great Recession. The expiration was scheduled for 2018. In 2016, the legislature passed Proposition 55 on the ballot, which extended the temporary tax through 2030. Polls suggest a third extension will appear on the 2028 ballot. Sometimes the tax is temporary. Other times, the tax is only on the rich. Once the machinery is built, governments rarely dismantle it. The promise is the entry point. Reality is the precedent. Sergei Brin was born in Moscow in 1973. His father, Mikhail, was a mathematician at Moscow State University. His mother, Eugenia, was a researcher at the Soviet Oil and Gas Institute. The Soviet Union in the 1970s was an officially atheist and unofficially anti-Semitic. Mikhail Brin had been blocked from graduate study in physics because he was Jewish and forced into a backwater of mathematics where Jews were tolerated. The family applied for an exit visa in 1978. They were denied. Mikhail was fired the next day for the act of asking. 6 months later, the visa was approved. The Brin family arrived in Maryland in 1979 with 2 suitcases and approximately $700 in cash. Sergei Brin was 6 years old when his parents fled the Soviet Union. He attended public schools in Maryland, and he earned a bachelor's degree from the University of Maryland and a master's degree from Stanford. In 1995, he met another Stanford graduate student named Larry Page. In 1998, in a garage in Menlo Park, California, the two of them founded Google. By April of 2026, Brin's personal net worth was approximately $272 billion. He was the 8th richest person on Earth. In December 2025, Sergey Brin gave the New York Times a written statement. He said, quote, "I fled socialism with my family in 1979 and know the devastating, oppressive society it created in the Soviet Union. I don't want California to end up in the same place." The statement was published 2 days before his California residency was officially terminated.
Hassan Piker will have a thing or two to say about that. Oh, hello, Voldemort. Or he who must not be named. It's sad how people who have fled tyrannies or fled crap. What's a polite way to, you know what? Just fled dictatorships. Just absolute fled dictatorships, very strict regimes. Those who have fled them will go to what they believe to be a prosperous nation. And then they find themselves in New York City or California, and then they see the writing on the wall that everything that's being pushed by all these, I don't know what the best way is to say it, because they're supposed to be the all-inclusive people, but the problem is they allow all inclusivity, you know, the liberal woke agenda. They allow everyone except who doesn't agree with them, which basically is nobody. They don't allow anyone into their fold. They don't allow any kind of disagreement. And the people who fled all these dictatorships, who fled for their family, for a chance to, you know, continue on their life without being fearful of their own nation and being rounded up by their government, they're seeing the place they traveled to, which was supposed to be, you know, this prosperous place, following that route. Like, it seems like a lot of people forget, like, the first place the Nazis took over was Germany, and the first targeted group was the children. Because if you target the children, you target education, you control the next generation. The benefit now, which sadly isn't as much of a benefit, is the fact that the world is so small, you can just find out anything at your fingertips, right on the computer. The problem is, a lot of people don't have the ability to actually do the research themselves or look anything up themselves or even think for themselves. A lot of people just don't have the ability to think for themselves, which is kind of sad. Rational thought used to be something that you seem to, I don't know. I don't know where people are supposed to get that from. I don't. I really don't. But yeah, it's insane. Everything woke does is the opposite for reality. Like, women in Muslim countries are fighting against oppression. Meanwhile, women in West are fighting for the oppressive system like hijab. Yeah. Because they don't know what they fight for. They don't know what they fight for. They're fighting for praise that they are fighting for oppression. I think that's the problem. When you are so blessed, you want there have been cases where I think there's a video of it like on Hulu or something, where there was this mother who loved the attention of taking care of her sick daughter because everyone would praise her, that she kept her daughter poisoned for decades. She poisoned her own daughter for the attention and approval of the people around her. That is a sick mind to have. But a lot of people, they do that because they want the approval of having the whatever approved opinion. That's why they do it. They want that approved opinion. They want that approval. They want that yas queen. They want that you do it. You fight for those who don't have voices. Nonsense. We're in the United States of America. We shouldn't have to care what goes on in Palestine, Israel. We shouldn't have to care what goes on in Ukraine, Russia. We shouldn't have to care it's not our place. It's not our place. Why are our soldiers in some of those situations? No clue. But a lot of times, for some reason, they want to pick up a flag for something they truly don't understand and have no concept of and say they're backing it. Why? Because they've been told to. They have been told to. And they need to toe the line with the rest of the herd, because if they're not, they're being hunted down and butchered for meat. If they don't follow the rest of the herd, they're being utilized for meat. They're being targeted. Yeah. It's just insane. These people are absolutely insane.
And his Nevada residency was officially established. Brin had spent his political...
Sam Piker is a respectable Turkish citizen. U.S. captured him because of his divine talent and the fact that he had a higher IQ than Einstein. They just don't let him go because the U.S. would collapse if he leaves. Exactly. That's exactly why the U.K., it's reverse psychology. It's reverse psychology. The UK banned him. That way, he sneaks in illegally, and then the UK can capture him and utilize his talents. It's reverse psychology. Oh, damn, I guess I'm a radical because I have beard. You can shave that off. It's not a big deal. But there are a lot of woke people that have beards. Just... sometimes really weird ones, or sometimes it's colored or whatever.
Career as a moderate Democrat. He had donated to Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, and to Joe Biden. In 2024, for the first time in his career, Brin donated to the Republican National Committee. He has also donated to the gubernatorial campaign of Steve Hilton, the British-born Fox News host, now leading the Republican primary polls in the race for California governor. Larry Page, Brin's Google co-founder, finalized residency in Singapore. Peter Thiel had already established residency in Florida in 2018, but had maintained a primary home in Los Angeles. The Los Angeles home was sold in November of 2025 for $88 million. Travis Kalanick, the founder of Uber, finalized residency in Miami. Don Hinckley, the founder of the Los Angeles auto lender Knight Specialty Insurance, established residency in Nevada. Mark Zuckerberg established residency in Florida with a $170 million waterfront mansion on Indian Creek, the same Miami island where Jeff Bezos has his compound. These departures represent the publicly confirmed cases. The state franchise tax board does not release residency data on individual taxpayers. Industry sources told the Los Angeles Times that as many as 20 additional billionaires changed their official tax domicile in the final 90 days of 2025. The combined net worth of just the publicly confirmed cases adds up to a number that, according to SEIU United Healthcare Workers West's own internal modeling, eliminates more than a quarter of the projected revenue from the tax. Roughly $26.8 billion in projected tax revenue walked out of California before the measure even qualified for the ballot. None of this exodus pattern was created by the billionaire tax. Capital flight from California is older than the wealth tax. It is older than the SEIU United Healthcare Workers West campaign. It is, at this point, older than most of the staffers running the campaign. Elon Musk moved Tesla's headquarters from Palo Alto to Austin in 2021. SpaceX moved its headquarters from Hawthorne to Starbase, Texas in 2024. Oracle moved its headquarters to Austin in 2020. Hewlett-Packard Enterprise moved its headquarters to Houston in 2020. Charles Schwab moved its headquarters...
Everything's going to Texas and Florida. That's what's funny. Is all these places are leaving blue states and going to primarily, even the rich billionaires, all the businesses are going to red states. Why? I guess people just want to work there. People that fly red apparently want to work for a living. They want to provide for their families. Like, again, it's the silent majority. That's the sad part. It's the silent majority. Why does it always seem like a certain narrative is so loud online? Why? Because the majority of people that have rational thinking work for a living. It's the chronically unemployed. It's those who don't provide anything to society, which are online barking at everybody, who don't follow their narrative. Austin and Dallas faces woke crisis. Yeah, because a lot of the people who caused the problem in California or in New York are traveling to, guess what? Florida. Are traveling to, guess what? Texas. They're like, I think Texas now is predominantly, hey, Jay, Texas predominantly now purple. It's a purple state because so many Californians and all traveled to Texas because the taxes are much lighter. They're not as severe. So a lot of people up and moved when they could. Bringing the same ideologies that ruined California to another state. And then when that state gets destroyed, they're not going to blame it on themselves for the policies they're passing. They're going to blame it on the whatever party. Because they can't blame themselves. They just can't. When both sides are kind of bad. But it's just like some sides just seem to be a little more... Anyone that praises opening a border and encouraging slave labor is definite. And by what I mean slave labor is having illegal immigrants in the nation. Anyone backing that, we don't need to support them. We don't need to support them. They want to win the vote through falsehoods instead of actually requiring U.S. citizens to be the only ones with the right to vote. LOL, I was busy in work, couldn't join in mainstream. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Work comes first. Worst come first.
To Westlake, Texas in 2021. Palantir moved its headquarters to Denver. Toyota North America moved its headquarters to Plano, Texas. Chevron moved its headquarters from San Ramon to Houston in 2024.
Austin's turning
Pace
blue.
accelerated after 2020. California has lost net domestic population every single year from 2020 to 2025. Texas gained 1.2 million net residents during that 5-year window. Florida gained roughly 1.05 million. Tennessee, North Carolina, and South Carolina all posted record migration growth. The Internal Revenue Service tracks migration through tax filing. In 2024, the most recent year with full data, California experienced a net outflow of approximately 24,000 households earning over $200,000 per year. Florida gained 55,359 of those households. Texas, 51,600. Population shifts translate
California's
directly into
doomed.
political
That's
power.
what this
The 2030 census is projected to cost California 3 congressional seats and 3 electoral college votes. Texas will gain 4. Florida will gain 3. The political map of the United States is being redrawn by U-Haul drivers. Tony Hsiu, founder of DoorDash, retains his California residency, but has restructured his holdings through a Wyoming trust. Chamath Palihapitiya, the venture capitalist, relocated to Texas. Joe Lonsdale, the Palantir co-founder, relocated to Austin. Keith Rawa, the PayPal Mafia veteran, relocated to Miami. Bill Lee, who hosted Donald Trump's 2020 fundraisers, relocated to Texas. And Hollywood also wasn't spared. Joe Rogan moved his podcast and entire production operation to Austin in 2020. Ben Shapiro moved the Daily Wire to Nashville. Mark Wahlberg purchased a $38 million estate in Nevada. The cultural exodus mirrors the economic one, and the entertainment industry has begun studying relocation packages in Austin, Atlanta, Las Vegas, and Nashville. Corporations followed the people. The people followed the climate, cost of living, the schools, crime statistics, and the taxes. The exodus has accelerated under the wealth tax pressure. It didn't begin there. It began roughly 15 years ago, and it has compounded every single year since. To understand why 6 billionaires would rather pay tax attorneys to handle their relocation than write California a check, it helps to look at what California does with the tax money it already collects. Start with the employment.
So just changing the demography and population, not so much. So the California keeps passing laws that make the working class people just have to pay much. So when I get a chance to finally uproot and move, I'm gonna uproot and move. It's just way too expensive being here. Way too expensive. I can't afford it. I can't afford it. I don't even make enough in a year to yeah. So I just can't afford it. But the thing is, it's just like they pass so many laws that even the rich and wealthy can't afford to be here, that they're up and moving to, well, red states, which turn purple because they're taking their beliefs with them. And then when those states end up turning blue, they're gonna blame the fact that the taxes are going up, the fact that there's a bunch of homeless everywhere. Even though Austin does have a huge homeless problem, but that comes with the territory of allowing it to be more purple. But yeah, that's what's going on. It's just crazy. It's just crazy. Wow, then you must be in love with blue color. blue California. No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. California is just a terrible place. And that's the thing. I saw the writing on the wall when I lived in San Francisco. Like, you could tell, like, I have never seen such a dystopian society than when I was living in San Francisco. Like, I think it's over 10 years ago now. Over 10 years ago when I was living in San Francisco for college. Sheer dystopian. Like, everyone's seen those movies where you have the poor cast and then you have the rich cast. And there's always like that border where you have to pass. You could see the rich society through the bars. The only difference is there were no bars. It's just there was a poor side of the street where all the homeless, all the homeless people going to the bathroom on the streets, everything happened on this side. And then you had the rich and wealthy hotels and everything on the other side, literally side by side. You look across the street and you would see the impoverished. You're on the impoverished side, you look across the street, you'd see the rich and wealthy. It was so dystopian. So dystopian. It was weird. And you would have to know what side of the road you're supposed to be on, or else you get judged, or the police, who might have been smoking weed a moment prior, would stop you because you don't belong in certain areas. It was crazy, and I left, and then the entire state of California is just doomed.
Development Department. The Employment Development Department, known by the acronym EDD, is the California state agency that handles unemployment insurance. The Department of Labor's Inspector General estimates the EDD paid out $55 billion in fraudulent claims between March 2020 and the end of 2022. To put that number in perspective, $55 billion is more than the entire annual budget of the state of Tennessee. It is more than the GDP of Iceland. The figure also exceeds NASA's annual budget, and the state of California simply gave it away. Among the recipients of fraudulent California.
Yeah, and that's why they had to have the Nick Shirley Act. Stop Nick Shirley Act. They couldn't have more people calling out the fraudulent money being just taken away, being lost.
California unemployment benefits were 35,000 individuals filing claims from inside California state prisons. The list included 133 inmates on death row at San Quentin. Scott Peterson, who was on death row for murdering his pregnant wife Lacey, received unemployment benefits. Carrie Stainer, the Yosemite serial killer who decapitated 4 people in 1999, received benefits. Wayne Adam Ford, the truck driver serial killer, received benefits. Wesley Shermantine, the speed freak killer, received benefits. Izoro Aguirre, who tortured 8-year-old Gabriel Fernandez to death in 2013, received benefits. Some of these claims were filed under names like Poopy Britches and John Doe. The Sacramento County District Attorney at the time, Anne Marie Schubert, called it the most significant fraud on taxpayer funds in California history. According to investigators, the Social Security numbers belonged to convicted felons whose incarceration records were available to any government employee with a working computer. The technology to cross-check unemployment claimants against the prison database has existed at the EDD for 5 years. The EDD had simply chosen not to implement it. The EDD paid benefits to claimants in Russia, Nigeria, and Romania. Bank accounts in foreign countries received direct deposits from the state of California.
They need to be charged for treason. That's the thing. The U.S., there needs to be much harsher punishments now. The world is now in a state where it's so easy to do treason because the world's so small. The world is so small that we need to start actually trying more people for it. Even if it's accidental, people need to actually learn that there are consequences to actions. You can't just say, oh, I didn't know any better. No, you've betrayed the nation. Like, if it's like your own personal money, like let's say you're tricked, like what was it? There was a group of old ladies who were scammed out of like their retirement from like a few Indian guys who worked at a gas station and wanted to just take the money. That's one thing. That's a personal issue. But this is literally a government, a federal or a state government that is giving money away to foreign nationals. And not only that, criminals who are in the system. They are paying them, giving my money and my future money, because a lot of the money is California doesn't even have. So guess what? The next year that comes around, taxes will go up. Why? Because I now need to pay for the debt that California has accrued due to giving more money than they had. That's what's insane. A lot of things, like, states need to follow basic finance. The nation needs to follow basic finance. I understand finance. I understand credit. I understand debt. But what's funny, a lot of people don't understand that, and they've carried that into places of power. That's why the United States, I think, is like it is the most in-debt nation. What is it, like $78 trillion in debt? I mean, I can't even fathom that. I can't even fathom that. But we're so massively in debt because we're stealing from our own future. America, California, literally passes the buck down the road. A lot of people, how many people have said, oh, it's future myself's problem? How many people have said that? I've never once said that because I understand what it can lead to. But so many people use that as an excuse where, oh, the future me will handle it. But the future you might be in a worse situation than you are in now. Why would you push something that you can deal with right now down the road? So many people do that. It's crazy. It's crazy. And the fact that it's being done statewide, and not only statewide, nationwide, where they're passing the buck down the road that where I have to pay more taxes later, and then my children will have to pay even more taxes, and then my children's children, if the United States doesn't get so far into debt that it's no longer here, will have to pay an exorbitant amount of taxes. Like, what is it? That nation in Africa, or yeah, I think it's a nation in Africa that has like $1 trillion bill, which is like less than $1. That's where the U.S. is going to end up. They're going to be printing these $1 trillion bills that have no value because the bill itself has no value.
For months. The Department of Labor Inspector General identified roughly $600 million in claims paid to foreign accounts. Investigators believe the figure is several times higher. The official in charge of the EDD during the worst years of the fraud was Julie Su. Julie Su faced no professional consequences for the EDD failure. The Newsom administration did not know her. The state attorney general never opened an investigation into her conduct. In 2021, President Biden nominated her to serve as Deputy Secretary of the United States Department of Labor. The nomination was confirmed by the Senate. In 2023, she was elevated to Acting Secretary of Labor of the entire United States. While serving in that position, she signed off on forgiving California's $20 billion debt to the federal government. The debt California had run up paying out the fraudulent claims she had failed to prevent. Now moved to high-speed rail. In 2008, California voters approved the ballot measure authorizing $9.95 billion in bonds to build a high-speed rail between Los Angeles and San Francisco. The total project cost was estimated.
See, this is how I know that, so California, I've lived here the majority of my life. I don't think I've ever had the right to speak on who's in power. I've never once felt like I have a say. Why? Because majority of people didn't want this. Who was the high-speed rail for? Not a single person would have been able to utilize it. The Amtrak is subsidized by the government, which is the nation's, train. It only runs because the government pays for it. It's a net negative because no one uses a train. You think people are going to pay hundreds of dollars for a bullet train ticket? Oh, it'll get you there quickly. Yeah, in like 20 stops. Yeah, anyone who thought, well, it just wouldn't get there. It wouldn't get there. Governor for California, hopefully Spencer. Or sorry, that's L.A. mayor. Who is it? Hilton. I doubt he'll win, but yeah, hopefully. I doubt he'll make any changes because even when Arnold Schwarzenegger won, he couldn't do any make any choices. Why? Because he got stonewalled every step of the way. Like, that's the thing. It's just like you can get in power, but the problem is if too many people are in your way, you can't do anything. You can't do anything.
At $33 billion. The completion date was 2020. The voters were promised a state-of-the-art bullet train comparable to the Shinkansen in Japan or the TGV in France. In April of 2026, the projected cost of the project has risen to $231 billion.
See, and I was saying 1.70, or sorry, 170 billion. It's projected to have already reached over 231 billion. That is crazy. That is crazy.
$1 That figure was confirmed by State Senator Tony Strickland, who is the vice chair of the State Senate Transportation Committee. The California High-Speed Rail Authority disputes the $231 billion number and insists the actual figure is only $126 billion. But either way, the original $33 billion budget has been exceeded by at least 3.8 times and at most by 7 times. The completion date has also slipped from 2020 to 2032, the first segment, and to 2040 for the full Los Angeles to San Francisco line. Federal funding of $4 billion was pulled by the Trump administration in 2025. As of June 2025, no track has been laid. Lou Thompson, the former chair of the authority—
Yep. That's literally as much as it's done. It was funny because I was driving to it, I was driving down the highway with my wife, and we were going to go see Durandar and The Revenge. On the way there, I didn't even see it. I completely, because I thought it was longer than it was. I drove past it, and I was just like, it should be here somewhere. And on the way back, I noticed it, but it was like a blink of an eye. You see it, and then it's gone. And then it's gone. Because it's not even a mile long. It's not even a mile long. You see it as you drive to it. You can see it as you pass by, and then it's gone. It takes less than a minute to drive past it. Less than a minute.
Has been laid.
Lou
Thompson, the former chair of the authority's peer review group, called the entire project a, quote, dead end. Morocco, by comparison, completed its El Barak high-speed rail
4
line
pillars,
in 2018. The El Barak runs 200 miles from Casablanca to Tangier at speeds of 200 miles per hour. The total construction cost was $2.3 billion. Morocco's per capita gross domestic product is roughly $4,000. California's is roughly $95,000. Morocco built operational high-speed rail, and California built a 1,600-foot bridge to nowhere in Madera County, and a 700-page binder of business plans. Now, homelessness. California has spent $24 billion on homelessness programs over the past 5 years. During that exact same 5-year period, the official homeless population grew from 151,000 people to—
Well, because everyone's, like, a lot of the people who are homeless in California aren't even from California anymore. A lot of places know they can just ship them to California because California will just rise up their own debt, giving them everything they could possibly want. Free phones, free tents, free food, free drugs, whatever they want, California will give it to them. Like, heck, in San Francisco, they have injection centers, or bring a needle, get a needle. But you don't have to bring a needle. In order to get a needle, they'll just give you a needle no matter what. That's why there's a ton of needles loose around San Francisco, because they're not going to bring in a new needle. They're just going to go and get a new, they're not going to bring in their used needle. They're just going to go get a new one. Because they have a habit of, after they shoot up, and then when they come to, they're just gonna walk straight back, grab another one, or just, use the needle they just dropped.
181,000 people. The state auditor reported in 2024 that agencies responsible for spending those $24 billion could not account for how 20 of the $24 billion were used. The audit identified no central database tracking outcomes. There was no constant definition of housed versus unhoused. Roughly 200 separate state and local agencies operate homelessness programs in California with overlapping mandates and uncoordinated budgets. San Francisco spends roughly $60,000 per year per homeless individual. The median rent in San Francisco for a one-bedroom apartment is approximately $36,000. The city could rent
per homeless person. Make that make sense. That's more than I make in a year. That's more than I make in a year. And a homeless person. Because you have to think about the everything that's put into place. You have the infrastructure. You have the food that's spent on them. You have the phones that's spent on them. You have the services that are spent on them. Then you have all the healthcare coordinators who are spent on them. For each individual, I can easily see it. I can easily see how it's gotten to that point. California is becoming Gotham. Yeah. It used to be like in the original Batman movie with Michael Keaton. It was in Detroit. Batman was in Detroit, but no. That Gotham is San Francisco. Gotham is LA. Those are the new locations for Gotham City. It has to. Even San Francisco gets incredibly foggy, so you could easily do it there. But yeah, I make just slightly more than this. Actually, I don't really think so. Gross, net. Yeah. So I basically make that.
Every homeless individual or private apartment pay all utilities and have $24,000 left over per person every year. San Francisco doesn't. Money flows instead to nonprofit intermediaries, consultants, and case management services. 23 grand jury investigation in San Francisco identified one homelessness nonprofit that spent $1.7 million on staff salaries in a single year and produced not a single placement into permanent housing. Then there's Medi-Cal, the program at the heart of the billionaire tax pitch. Medicare pays out an estimated $4.4 billion in improper payments per year, according to the most recent state auditor's report. State auditors report 0.5 million Californians, more than a third of the state's entire population. Eligibility verification has lapsed for years. The audit identified hundreds of thousands of enrollees who were no longer eligible but continued to receive coverage. Provider fraud, including phantom billing and kickback schemes, accounts for approximately $1.8 billion of that loss every year. Finally, EBT cards. EBT cards skimming losses on California's CalFresh food stamp program have grown from $30 million in 2022 to a projected $250 million in 2025. The state allows benefits stolen by criminal skimming operators to be reissued from the state budget. California also does not require chip-enabled cards, despite the technology being standard in commercial banking for over a decade. Romanian and Bulgarian organized crime groups have built operations specifically targeting California EBT terminals. The skimming operations are well documented, but the state has not coordinated meaningfully with law enforcement to disrupt them. California faces a structural budget deficit of $20 billion in the 2026 to 2027 fiscal year. The State Legislative Analyst Office projects deficits of $30 billion or more for the 4 following fiscal years. The billionaire tax is being sold as the answer. The deficit was not produced by insufficient taxation, though. California already has the highest marginal income tax rate in America, the highest gas tax.
We get taxed more than anyone else. More than anyone else. It's the failure of being able to utilize the money. And the problem is, where does my tax dollars go to? They go to helping those who don't want to work. They go to helping the homeless who are just, some need mental health. Some of them are just, they're just net negatives on society and don't know how to apply for anything because they're just kind of brain dead. And then it goes to the illegal immigrants who have come here and they need protection, apparently, from ICE officials who are literally trying to get those people who are stealing our state's money. Well, not really stealing our state's money, but are given our state's money to live in a house that in most cases is nicer than the freaking people who have to work for a living and live in the middle of like a trailer park. Why? Because working full time isn't enough to actually pay for the necessities you need to live. That's the sad part. Me working a full-time job, I can't live a comfortable life. I can't live a comfortable life in the state of California. You just can't. I would need like 4 other roommates working the same job for me to actually have a decent house. The whole thing is just crazy. It absolutely sucks. The problem is the tax dollars are being like the whole railway, the whole high-speed rail given to a friend to be the contractor for the business or for the high-speed rail, or given to the homeless or the illegal immigrants or the EBT tribes or all those who are absolutely a negative. Are there people who can't work for a living? Absolutely. Absolutely. Someone who probably was on a railroad track, lost their legs, or was in a war, lost their arm, lost their leg. Probably the only thing they can do is sit at a Walmart chair, welcome people in, look at their receipts, and then let them know they can go. That's probably the extent of the job they can do. So maybe they should receive some benefits on top of that. The fact that the VA can't even function, people want all of California and all of the nation to be a socialist society. It's impossible. The only few socialist policies we have are completely broken and don't function. All the money, all the food go to those who don't deserve it, and the ones who absolutely need it, like our veterans, don't get anything. They get ignored. That's how messed up this is. That's how messed up this is. And those people who've broken the law to come here illegally, they get far more than people who are adding something and actually paying taxes to the state that I have lived in my entire life. I am being robbed. I am being robbed. But then again, it's the state of California. I don't have a voice. I don't have a voice.
Tax in America, the highest sales tax in major metropolitan areas in America, and the third highest corporate tax rate in America. The deficit was produced by a state spending base that has grown 78% in the past decade against a state population that shrunk. So clearly they have no idea how to budget their money, which is why they should have used the Dollarwise budgeting app, a budgeting app that you can try right now for free. And California would actually get their shit under control because with the automatic account connections, you see exactly where your money is going every moment of every day, so you can actually change what you need to change to improve what you want to improve in your financial life. So go to Dollarwise.com or download the Dollarwise budgeting app. Take a free trial, see if it works for you, like the tens of thousands of monthly active users who use it.
I know this is an offshoot channel for Caleb Hammer's channel. Is this Caleb Hammer talking? I think this is his voice. I think this is him narrating the whole thing. Okay.
To improve their lives. Every legislative session, a small number of California Republicans introduce bills designed to reduce state spending. Each session, those bills die in committee. The math of California politics has made spending reductions structurally impossible. California's state legislature is 75% Democratic. Of the 80 seats in the state assembly, 60 are held by Democrats. In the state Senate, Democrats hold 30 of 40 seats. The Democratic supermajority means tax increases require 0 Republican votes. Spending reductions require 0 Republican input. California has not had a divided government.
They would always argue Belgium case of a 60% tax income. Well, isn't Belgium like completely closed? Like only citizens are allowed that. Only those who are a part of the nation are allowed that. And they're very intolerant of people just showing up illegally because it'll just destroy the system entirely. Yeah, I mean, it only works if you actually prevent it from being destroyed by those who are bad faith actors. You have to keep people of bad faith out. The problem is in the state of California, we keep voting the bad faith actors into power. We keep voting them into power because honestly, I personally believe that the state of California hasn't had a legal election in a long time. In a long time. It's easy to believe that this whole place is nothing but fraud. Nothing but fraud, especially with like the voting dead. That's why they don't want a voter's ID, a voter's license. Yeah, go figure. Of course. Why would anyone want a voter's license? Because the excuse is black people don't know how to get a voter's license. Mexicans don't know how to get a voter's license. The funny thing is, in my head, I'm like, if someone's too stupid to know how to get a voter's license, we don't want them to vote. We don't want them to vote. Whether they be white, black, Asian, Hispanic, I don't care. If they're too retarded to get a voter's ID, they don't deserve to vote. And that just makes it easy. That just makes it easier for everybody. But they don't want that because they can easily have someone vote for anyone. Have anyone vote for anyone. I take in a lot of the deceased because I'm pretty sure my grandfather's still voting. I'm pretty sure all my grandparents are still voting. They've been dead for almost a decade now. Some of them even longer. And they're probably still voting. Because for some reason, they don't remove these people who are deceased from the registry. They just mail the ballots out again. And then again. And then again. And then again.
Since 2010. Public sector unions are the single largest source of campaign funding for California state legislators. The California Teachers Association alone spent $23 million on the 2024 election cycle. The Service Employees International Union spent $18 million.
Belgium.
The California Correctional Peace Officers Association spent $7 million. Combined union spending in California state legislative races approached $80 million in a single cycle. No legislator in a competitive district can win without union endorsement. No union endorses a candidate who has voted to cut public sector employment. California state and local government employs 2.6 million people. California has more government employees per capita than any other large state in the country. Average state employee compensation, including benefits, exceeds $130,000 per year. The California Highway Patrol has 287 individual officers earning more than $300,000 per year in total compensation. The University of California system employs 11 vice chancellors at the Berkeley campus alone, each earning more than $400,000 per year. CalPERS, the California Public Employees Retirement System, manages roughly $500 billion in pension assets and faces an unfunded liability of $100 $165 billion. CalSTRS, the equivalent system for teachers, manages $320 billion in assets and faces an unfunded liability of $110 billion. The combined unfunded gap exceeds the state's entire annual operating budget. Closing the gap through investment returns alone would require sustained returns of 9% per year against a 30-year market average of roughly 7%. The alternative path, adding contributions, would require diverting roughly $12 billion every year from other state programs. Neither path has been adopted. The legislator has chosen to accept that future taxpayers will absorb the obligation. Spending cuts produce concentrated, organized losers. Tax increases produces dispersed, disorganized losers. The political math always favors the tax increase. Public sector unions know exactly which legislators will receive their endorsement. Taxpayers do not have a comparable organization. The asymmetry is structural, and it is compounded for 40 years. Polling on the billionaire tax tells the same story. Among California voters earning under $100,000 per year, the measure polls at 71% support. Among voters earning over $250,000 per year, the measure polls at 38% support. The math of Democratic politics rewards taxation of small minorities. A successful campaign convinces 51% of voters that the cost will be paid by someone else. This logic produced the billionaire tax. The same logic will produce the next tax. Internal documents leaked to the Wall Street Journal in March 2026 show union modeling for a future variant of the same measure, with the threshold lowered from $1 billion to $50 million. Second variant, modeled but not yet drafted, lowers the threshold to $100,000 in net worth. The starting point is billionaires. The destination is the upper middle class. That is eventually the average two income.
Yep. It's funny. I said it at the very beginning. The real target is the middle class, not the upper middle class. It's just the middle class. Those who do not have the financial backing in order to up and leave this terrible state. They're going to be the ones that are hit with this massive tax increase, because they're going to be the only ones that are left. They can't leave. That's why I need to get out before I end up being trapped here permanently. Oh my gosh, this place is just terrible. But yeah, of course they're targeting them. Of course they're targeting them.
California household with a paid-off home, 2 cars, and a 401k. Tax economists call this pattern
California tax increase in
California. The same
California
dynamic plays out across every income tax, every estate tax, and every wealth tax ever imposed by any government in human history. The wealthy households at the top of the bracket leave. The revenue collapses. The threshold gets lower to capture a broader population. Repeat until everyone is paying. California is not the first government to attempt taxation of accumulated wealth rather than annual income. 12 OECD countries have imposed wealth taxes since 1990. 8 of those 12 have repealed their wealth taxes. The pattern is constant, and the data is unforgiving. The Building a Better California opposition campaign has consultants studying that data right now.
Why did they remove those policies? Because the billionaires up and left. And the thing is, like, after the policy is integrated, a lot of those billionaires will not return. A lot of those billionaires will not return to ever add anything back to the state or nation that passed those laws. Why? Because they're better off elsewhere. That nation has proven that they don't want them there. That state has proven that they don't want them there. So of course they're going to get up and go. Of course they're going to get up and go because it's easy for them. It's incredibly easy for them. For billionaires to get up and go anywhere in the world and live a lavish lifestyle. They don't need to be in the nation of their birth. They don't need to be in a nation that they're comfortable in, because with their money, they can be comfortable anywhere. Same thing with millionaires. They can travel somewhere and build up from scratch because they have enough of a savings in order to start fresh. Will they probably ever get back to that millionaire point? Who knows? Maybe. But at the same time, you can't win by taxing the rich and wealthy. That's why their objective in the end is to tax the middle class, because they're the only ones above like a certain threshold of earnings that are also beneath a certain threshold of earnings where they can't leave, but they're above a certain threshold that their taxes actually do add to the pockets of California.
Now in considerable detail. France imposed the solidarity tax on wealth in 1982. The tax applied to households with net assets above approximately 1.3 million euros. Between 2000 and 2017, French government data confirmed that approximately 42,000 millionaires left France to escape the tax. Independent estimates put the number above 60,000. The departures include patrimonial flight, meaning the flight of inherited wealth became a national term. The French treasury estimated the tax raised roughly 5 billion euros per year. Independent economists estimate the tax cost France 7 billion euros per year in lost income income tax, lost capital gains tax, and lost economic activity. In 2017, President Emmanuel Macron repealed the French wealth tax and replaced it with a real estate tax. His finance minister explained the reasoning in a speech to the National Assembly. France could no longer afford the cost of the tax. The wealth tax had become a tool for redistributing French wealth to Switzerland, Belgium, and the United Kingdom. Sweden imposed the wealth tax in 1947. The tax applied to all Swedish residents with assets above a certain threshold. Ingvar Kamprad, the founder of IKEA, relocated his official residency to Switzerland in 1973 and ran the world's largest furniture company from a small Swiss village for the next 40 years. Hans Rausing, the founder of the Swedish package giant Tetra Pak, relocated to the United Kingdom in 1982. Sweden repealed its wealth tax in 2007 with cross-party support. The repeal vote included the Social Democrats, the same party that originally enacted the tax. Norway raised its wealth tax from 0.85% to 1.1% in 2022. In the 2 years that followed, 261 individuals classified as ultra-high net worth left Norway. The number of millionaires departing Norway reached 254 in 2023, the largest single-year exodus in Norwegian history. The Norwegian government's wealth tax revenue increased by 146 million euros in the first year of the higher rate. The lost income tax revenue from those who departed in the same year exceeded 594 million euros. Norway lost more than 4 times the new revenue it gained. Germany struck down its wealth tax as unconstitutional in 1995, Austria in 1994, Denmark in 1997, the Netherlands in 2001, and Finland in 2006. Iceland repealed its wealth tax in 2006, briefly reinstated it in 2010 during the post-financial crisis budget panic, and repealed it for the second time in 2014. Spain is the only major European economy that retains a wealth tax in 2026. The Spanish wealth tax raises approximately 1.7 billion euros per year against an estimated 2.4 billion euros in lost economic activity. Spain has lost an estimated 11,000 millionaires since 2020. Madrid, a regional capital, has refused to enforce the regional component of the tax, which has triggered an internal political crisis between the central government in Madrid and the regional one. Italy passed a one-time wealth tax in 1992 during a domestic financial crisis. Italy lost 23% of its top-tier taxpayers within 5 years. Tax was not renewed. The pattern that repeats across every country, every decade, and every economic environment is straightforward. Wealth has legs. The very characteristic that defines a wealthy household, the ownership of mobile financial assets, is the same characteristic that defines its capacity to relocate at will. Capital does not respond to political emotion. Capital responds to expected return. The expected return on remaining in a wealth tax jurisdiction is negative, and over the long term, the negative return compounds. The decision to leave is not ideological, it's mathematical. California is now the last major economy on the planet that has not absorbed this lesson. The campaign behind the billionaire tax has cited Switzerland as a successful model. Switzerland's wealth tax raised
I think Switzerland's the one I was thinking
of total tax revenue. Switzerland has 8.7 million people. The country runs on a different government structure. No super voting share corporations, no concentrated technology sector, no Hollywood, and a 100-year political culture of cantonal autonomy. The comparison is structurally meaningless. The architects of Initiative 25...
Yeah, the fact that that's the kind of comparison they go to for like, oh, you see, this kind of system does work. This system does work. It doesn't work. It doesn't work, not in the United States of America. It's next to impossible for the United States of America to ever be compared. To that. Because there are just too many people here. There are just too many people here. There, it's more like a bubble. And one needle can burst that bubble. But so far, it's held for a while. It's held for a bit. But you get what you put into something. And the problem is you can't have the billionaires tax as well as the open borders, as well as socialist programs, as well as, because then again, money doesn't come from nothing. First of all, it comes from what we believe the dollar is worth, but because it is a fictional construct to begin with, the only thing that truly has value is, well, gold. Diamonds don't even have value anymore with how they can easily be made. Like gold, oils, coal, fossil fuels, energy is like the one. Energy is the most important resource imaginable, but you can't compare other nations to the way the U.S. handles things and how you could have these programs because it works in this little niche location that has isolated itself from the wider world. Not entirely, but you know what I mean. And then everyone's like, yeah, we should do that because they obviously make it work. Yeah, but they make it work within their own structure, within their own system. The United States can never be that. We're too much of a capitalist society where everybody wants to be the one at the top. Everybody wants money. But that's the problem. Everyone's begging for money that isn't theirs. That's the problem with these socialist movements. A lot of these people want money that isn't theirs. They want money from the billionaires. They want money from the millionaires. Heck, they want money from the middle class because most of them are poor like me that work a dead-end job and want something more. The thing is, I know I'm not working the type of job to get me more money. That's my fault. So what do? I look for something better. The problem is, a lot of these people can't or won't. Or they just don't want to work for at all, and they just want to be paid to live, to exist. They just want to be paid to exist, which is ridiculous.
-0024 know this and have cited Switzerland anyway, because Switzerland is the only working example available. The Tax Foundation, a nonpartisan policy research organization in Washington, D.C., published an 18-minute deep analysis of the proposed California billionaire tax in January 2026. The headline conclusion of the analysis is technical, but it matters. The advertised 5% rate, according to the Tax Foundation, is a, quote, profound understatement. The actual effective rate of many California founders is multiple
Only the
times
working
higher.
class.
Wealth, as measured for the purposes of the tax, is an accounting concept. The vast majority of California billionaires' net worth is not cash. Almost all of it is equity in companies that the individual founded or built. The valuation of that equity is determined by the public stock market for traded shares or by the most recent funding round for private shares. Tony Xu, the founder of DoorDash, owns roughly 2.5% of DoorDash equity. The public valuation of DoorDash places his personal wealth at approximately $7 billion. However, his annual income is largely composed of unrealized capital gains. His DoorDash shares are subject to super voting rights, meaning he votes the equivalent of 10 shares for every 1 share owned. Selling those shares to pay a wealth tax bill would dilute his voting control over the company he built. The Tax Foundation calculates that a 5% wealth tax paid against Tony Xu's realized income produces an effective tax rate of 173%. He would owe more in wealth tax than he made in income. The same analysis applies to Sergey Brin, Larry Page, Mark Zuckerberg, and Dario Amodei of Anthropic. Jensen Huang of NVIDIA is the exception. Huang has publicly stated he is staying in California and urging others to move there. The publicly stated net worth of these individuals reflects the market value of company shares they have not sold. The 2026 billionaire tax demands payment in cash. To pay the tax, the founder must sell company shares. The sale of the company shares triggers federal capital gains tax at 23.8% and California state capital gains tax at 13.3%. The cumulative effective tax rate in the year of forced sale exceeds the income earned that year. And this isn't even theoretical. The mechanic is the entire reason the publicly traded technology sector functions the way it functions. Founders retain super voting shares specifically as a defense against hostile takeover attempts and short-term shareholder activism. Those shares fund long-term research, ambitious infrastructure investment, and high-risk product bets. Tesla's autopilot program, Google's quantum computing division, Meta's Reality Labs all exist because the founders of those companies could afford to lose money on those bets without losing control on their boards. Forcing the sale of those shares year after year dilutes the entire control structure of the companies. It also depresses the stock price for every other shareholder. The Tax Foundation analysis identifies a separate problem with the 2026 billionaire tax that its own drafters appear to not have anticipated. The measure includes anti-avoidance rules designed to prevent billionaires from transferring assets to children or trusts to reduce their wealth tax liability. The way those provisions are written captures the entire value of any trust to which assets are transferred in 2026, not just the value of that single transfer. Founders who set up generation-skipping trust in 2025 to manage their estates are now potentially liable for tax on the entire principal of those trusts, not just the new contributions. The Tax Foundation describes the drafting as, quote, possibly inadvertent, but the result is the same. The actual tax owned by any individual founder may end up dramatically higher than the published 5% rate. The Hoover Institution at Stanford published its own 142-page analysis in February 2026. The report concludes that the tax, even if it raises the projected $100 billion in revenue in year one, will trigger a net loss of $25 billion to the California state economy over the following 10 years. The losses come from departed founders, departed corporate headquarters, depressed venture investment, and the migration of high-income employees who follow their employers across state lines. UC Berkeley economics professor Enrico Moretti, in a Los Angeles Times interview, called the SEIU revenue projection, quote, way overly optimistic, and warned that the tax has, quote, the potential to completely destroy California's economy. California has been the global capital of venture capital deployment for 60 years. In 2024, roughly 51% of all American venture capital flowed into California-based companies. By the first quarter of 2026, that figure had fallen to 39%. The shift represents tens of billions of dollars in annual investment that previously concentrated in San Francisco, Palo Alto, and Mountain View, redirected to Austin, Miami, New York, and Seattle. The billionaire tax hasn't passed yet, but the capital is moving in advance. The Golden State is not failing because the state is uniquely cursed. It is failing because the state has adopted a model that doesn't work, refused to adapt when the model started to break, and now proposes to double down on the same model in a more aggressive form than any major economy on the planet has attempted in 30 years. But you understand why in the end. California seems to require more money. And lucky for you, you can literally get $200 for free right now by signing up for a Chime checking account using my link in the
Now it's
description below.
Chime.
It's not some weird scam or gimmick. They want you to use their platform. I want you to sign up because I get paid, and you want to sign up because you get paid. So it's a win-win-win. And with a high yield savings rate that is nation leading, there's literally no reason not to, because it's an incredible bank as well. I personally keep my emergency fund there. It's growing.
I think the first front page I watched wasn't Caleb Hammer voicing it. It must have been someone else.
Public revenue forecasting depends on stable assumptions. The billionaire tax breaks every assumption the state has used to model its revenue base. The top 1% of California earners produce roughly 50% of the state's income tax revenue. Inside that top 1%, the top 1/10 produces roughly 25% of the total. In any given year, the top 200 California households produce close to half of the operating budget of the 5th largest economy on the planet. Departing households take their income tax with them. Revenue doesn't just dip. Revenue completely collapses across multiple budget cycles. France lost 14% of its top-tier taxpayers within 10 years of imposing its wealth tax. Norway lost 19% of its ultra-high net worth households in 2 years of a moderate rate increase. Italy lost 23% of its top-tier taxpayers within 5 years of its 1992 one-time wealth tax. California has already lost 6 of its 214 confirmed billionaires before the measure even reached the ballot. So that number's only going to go up. The billionaire tax does not exist within a vacuum. The federal government is currently running annual deficits in excess of $2 trillion. The national debt has crossed $36 trillion. Federal interest payments now exceed the entire defense budget. Congress is unlikely to bail out California in the next major economic downturn. Sacramento will face its next recession alone. Once the wealth tax fails to deliver promised revenue and the international evidence makes it certain that it will fail, the California legislator will face...
I say that if it's bad. 36 is still bad. Sure, I said I was thinking like 78, but 36 is still bad.
Options: cut spending, which the political math forbids; raise income taxes on middle-class households, which is politically toxic; lower the threshold of the wealth tax to capture a broader slice of the population. The third option is the path of least resistance. It's also the path that the supporters of the initiative have already touched. California's gross domestic product, if the state were a country, would rank 5th in the world. California's manufacturing output exceeds Texas. California's agricultural output exceeds Iowa. California's port traffic exceeds the rest of the West Coast combined. The damage...
I know the port traffic and agriculture just because, like, what is it? 99% of like almonds in the world all come from California. All come from California. It was funny because I remember being when I was in India visiting the family. They pulled out like the tray and I was eating the almonds. I'm like, huh, this is from California. As I was eating the almonds, it's like, yeah. I mean, what are the odds that it comes from anywhere else when you bulk buy almonds? They're from California. They're from California.
From the billionaire tax, if the cascade unfolds in the manner Hoover and the Tax Foundation project, will be national damage, not regional. Capital doesn't just flow into a state in retreat. Once the perception of California shifts from rising power to declining empire, the recovery may take a generation. Other states are watching closely. New York Governor Kathy Hochul has publicly stated she will not pursue a wealth tax in New York. Massachusetts has imposed a millionaire's tax of 4% on incomes over $1 million and lost roughly 39,000 high-income filers to Florida and New Hampshire in the 2 years following passage. Illinois has imposed pension obligations that exceed the entire state operating budget. Connecticut has lost more high net worth households per capita than any state in the country. Washington state's voters rejected a wealth tax measure in 2024. The California vote is, in the sense, a national vote. The result will determine whether the most economically productive state in the union accelerates its decline or pulls back from the edge. A failed billionaire tax in California closes the door on similar measures in New York, Illinois, Massachusetts, and Washington for at least a decade. A successful billionaire tax in California opens that same door across the entire country. And there's also a clock. A California state law passed in 2014 allows ballot initiatives to be removed up until June 25th. That gives the state legislator about 2 months to negotiate a legislative compromise that would satisfy SEIU, United Healthcare Workers West, and convince the union to withdraw the measure. Governor Newsom has every political incentive to broker that deal. The union has every economic incentive to take it. If a compromise is struck before June 25th, the billionaire tax never reaches the ballot, and the multi-$100-million campaign collapses into a press conference in Sacramento. Without a compromise, the most expensive ballot fight in California history runs on television, online, and on the radio for the next 5 months. As of now, no compromise has been announced. Governor Gavin Newsom has publicly opposed the 2026 billionaire tax. Newsom calls the measure, quote, really damaging, in an interview that aired in early 2026. Newsom has not directly endorsed the opposition campaign. He has not directly endorsed the measure either. His political calculation is pretty straightforward. Public endorsement of the tax ends his presidential ambitions for the 2028 Democratic primary before the campaign begins. Public opposition to the tax alienates the progressive progressive base he needs to win the primary. The compromise position is to call the tax bad while doing nothing concrete to defeat it, and to hope SEIU United Healthcare Workers West takes a deal before June 25th. Former Governor Jerry Brown has opposed the measure publicly in a Sacramento BFN. Brown, who governed during the original Proposition 13 era of the late 1970s, argues the wealth tax misunderstands what California's wealthy households already pay. The top 1% of California earners already produce 50% of the state income tax revenue. Driving them away does not solve the budget, the departure ends the budget. Eric Schmidt, the former CEO of Google, has opposed the measure and co-founded Building a Better California, the primary opposition campaign organization. Mark Andreessen, the venture capitalist who funded Facebook and Twitter, has opposed the measure. Patrick Collison, the CEO of Stripe, has opposed it. Mike Moritz, the venture capitalist who funded Yahoo, Google, and PayPal, has opposed it. John Doerr, the venture capitalist who funded Amazon, has opposed it. Chris Larson, the chairman of Ripple, has opposed it. Each of these individuals has donated millions to the opposition campaign. Among elected Democrats, Representative Ro Khanna, who represents Silicon Valley in the United States House of Representatives, opposes the measure publicly. Khanna called it counterproductive. Khanna has now drawn a primary challenger from his left, a venture capitalist who supports the measure in the 2026 primary. Khanna may lose his seat to a more progressive Democrat over the issue. Among the candidates running to replace Newsom as governor in 2026, only one prominent Democrat has endorsed the billionaire tax. His name is Tom Steyer. He is a hedge fund billionaire,
and people don't like him. He's also promised to pay back crap, what is it? I forgot. There's a term for it. For reparations. He's promised to pay back reparations. You know, so if you happen to be anywhere in the world and move to California and you happen to be black tone in skin, you can claim the reparations, because apparently it doesn't matter if your family was brought here against your will or sold into slavery. It don't matter. What matters is your skin tone. It's funny how these people who claim not to be racist come across as so racist.
Who made his fortune at Farland Capital. Steyer is leading the Democratic gubernatorial primary on a platform of taxing himself. State Superintendent of Public Institution Tony Thurmond, also running for governor, has also endorsed the measure. Both of them are Democrats, and neither of them are the moderate wing of the party. On the Republican side of the gubernatorial race, Steve Hilton, the British-born former Fox News host, leads the Republican primary polls. Hilton is opposing the billionaire tax aggressively. Hilton has also been the recipient of donations from Sergey Brin, marking the first time in Brin's career that he has financially supported a Republican candidate for any office. Bernie Sanders, the senator from Vermont, traveled to Los Angeles in February 2026 to campaign for the billionaire tax. Robert Reich, the former Secretary of Labor under Bill Clinton, has endorsed the measure publicly. Connecticut Senator Chris Murphy has endorsed the measure publicly. The National Progressive Coalition supports the tax. The state Democratic establishment is split, anxious, and watching the polling weekly. NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang is the only confirmed California billionaire who has publicly broken with the opposition camp. Huang has not endorsed the tax. He has, however, publicly urged people to move to California rather than leave it. His position is that California is worth fighting for, not running from. NVIDIA's headquarters remains in Santa Clara. Huang remains a California resident. He is an outlier, and he knows it. On April 26, 2026, SEIU United Healthcare Workers West announced that the camp—
I hate that. Anytime I see the SEIU, it just reminds me, I see it all over the place, because it's like, we are strong together. The freaking union motto is just like, nope. I'm weaker because of you. If it wasn't for them, I'd be at my boss's door knocking on it, being like, I deserve a raise. Give me a raise or I'm gone. That's what I did to the last job, and I did good there. It's just like, it's so freaking ridiculous.
Campaign had collected over 1.5 million signatures in support of the 2026 Billionaire Tax Act. The required threshold for the ballot qualification was 875,000 valid signatures. The campaign turned in nearly double that number, providing a massive cushion against duplicate signatures, ineligible signatures, and signatures from non-registered voters. The Suzanne Jimenez, the SEIU United Healthcare Workers West Chief of Staff, gave a press conference in which she described the campaign as, quote, the opposition was already moving. Building a Better California, the political organization founded by Sergey Brin and Eric Schmidt, has raised over $80 million by the end of the first quarter of 2026. The opposition campaign is not just running an advertising campaign against the billionaire tax. It is also funding 3 separate counter-ballot initiatives, each of which would essentially nullify the tax if passed. The most aggressive of the 3 counter-initiatives would amend the California state constitution to ban retroactive taxation entirely, which would invalidate the residency provision at the heart of the billionaire tax. A second counter-initiative targets the way new tax revenue is allocated against existing education spending requirements. A third adds layers of additional audit requirements and spending restrictions to any new tax revenue. The cost of qualifying counter initiatives at the same speed has been enormous. Signature gatherers in California are now being paid up to $15 per signature, the highest rate in the history of the state. The arms race in signature collection has cost the opposition millions before the actual ballot campaign has even started. 3 California gubernatorial candidates have wrapped themselves around the issue. Tom Steyer, the billionaire Democrat, is running for governor on a platform of supporting the billionaire tax. Steve Hilton, the British-born Republican, is running on a platform of opposing the tax and reforming the entire California state government. San Jose Mayor Matt Mahan is running as a moderate Democrat opposed to the tax, primarily funded by Silicon Valley executives, but his polling numbers are stuck in the single digits. When Bernie Sanders campaigned in Los Angeles, the crowd was estimated at over 8,000 people. Sanders called the measure, quote, the most important state-level economic justice fight in America. He compared Sergey Brin and the rest of the opposition donors to the robber barons of the late 19th century. He didn't mention that Brin himself is the son of 2 refugees who fled actual socialism in 1979. On February 7th, 2020.
Because the thing is, as soon as you put a story, like the reason why they will never mention how some of these people got to where they are is because as soon as you see them as people, it's different. As soon as you see these people who fought hard for where they're at, it becomes different. Because a lot of people, they like to think like, who are the self-made billionaires? There's Elon Musk. There's Jeff Bezos. Even though he like, heck, they have a pic, like, what was it? I saw a picture of him from like the 1990s, early 1990s, where he was selling books off the computer. That's how Amazon started. It was a book retail site. That's how Amazon started until it was created into this massive billion-dollar company. But a lot of these people are self-made. But as soon as you actually start going down to telling their stories, you humanize these billionaires. Are some of them incredibly eccentric? Yeah, absolutely. Do some of them have very weird scruples? Are some of them kind of vicious? Absolutely. You don't get into that kind of get rich and wealthy by being the kind person. You don't. You have to be an innovator and you have to be cutthroat. The problem is all these people do something for some reason. Everyone seems to think that these people were just born into billions of dollars. We're just born into billions of dollars. Just imagine that. How can you possibly... Their children are being born into billions of dollars. Sure. But a lot of them created them because we didn't have billionaires till recently. Billionaires is a very new concept. In the last 20 years, we've started seeing the rise of billionaires because before that, we used to talk about millionaires. Millionaires were what was the big number. And the funny thing is, the billionaires now still don't reach the amount of worth that people like J.D. Rockefeller had back in the day. If you add inflation, if you add how the dollar has increased over time, the amount of money J.D. Rockefeller, all those Godfrey, but all those back in the day had, they would be trillionaires now. If you just inflate it all and made it relevant to this day's time. They were the richest upon the richest upon the richest in the world. And the billionaires now don't even cut it to how rich people were back in the day. That's actually insane. The billionaires now aren't nearly as rich as the millionaires were back in the day due to inflation and everything. But a lot of these people, they are self-made. They will never mention the fact that, oh, this guy, he was a refugee from Soviet Russia. Bernie Sanders would never mention that because he loves the Soviet Union. He loves that kind of, society. But yeah, they'll never mention it. They'll never mention it because they can't humanize these people. They have to leave them as like these monsters. When everyone's a human being, we all have failings. We all have strengths. We all have proclivities. We all are good. We all are evil. We all have different things that we want to do with our lives. None of us are exactly the same. And that's the problem. They just want to keep these people as like these fictional beasts that are hoarding all the wealth. They're hoarding all the wealth. And because they are hoarding all the wealth, they're the dragons on the pile of gold. The pile of gold that belongs to you. It belongs to you. So until you kill smog, you'll never get your money back. Smog. Until you kill smog, you'll never get your money back. Why? Because the dragons are hoarding all the wealth. The dragons have all the money. You got to kill the dragons first. You have to take the money from the dragons first before you can be wealthy, before you can get your money back. It's like, no. There's nothing wrong with humanizing someone and still thinking maybe they got more that they need to live on.
In San Francisco, a group of activists organized a pro-billionaire protest march outside the offices of SEIU, United Healthcare Workers West. The march was the first of its kind in San Francisco history. The march was attended by approximately 400 people. Reports from CNN, the New York Times, and the Wall Street Journal all covered it. The visual of San Franciscans defending billionaires from a labor union became one of the defining images of the early campaign, even if it was only 400 people. In March 2026, a coalition of progressive activists organized a protest outside Sergey Brin's former mansion in the Pacific Heights neighborhood of San Francisco. The mansion had been sold 3 months earlier to a Saudi sovereign wealth fund subsidiary for $80 million. Protesters didn't even know that. They were photographed by the local news holding signs that read, "Tax Brin now," outside a mansion Brin no longer owned, located in a state Brin no longer lived in a neighborhood that had become...
How would they feel if the Saudi guy walked out front, dressed in full garb and walks out front? How would they feel? Because you know all those people would be on his side no matter what. He claims trouble because of his religious belief. They would bow and scrape before him saying like, you know what, we apologize, you are our leader, you are the one we follow. What nation are you from? I'll fly your flag for you. It's the same. It's the same.
Quietly Saudi-owned. The footage went viral. Conservative commentators on X used it for a week. The campaign on social media is fragmented along generational lines. California voters under the age of 30 support the billionaire tax at 79%. Voters over 65 support it at 41%. The under 30 cohort grew up consuming an online media diet that frames billionaires as the cause of every economic problem young Americans face. The math of capital flight, of effective tax rates exceeding 100% of realized income, of state-level pension obligations that exceed annual revenue does not show up in 15-second TikTok clips. The class war narrative does. And these narratives are not equally true, but they are equally available. The Yes campaign has signed endorsement deals with 17 left-wing political influencers, including Hassan Piker, the Twitch streamer with over 3 million followers. The combined audience of those 17 accounts exceeds 80 million followers across all platforms. The campaign's primary advertising piece is a 90-second...
The funny thing is those Twitch streamers, a lot of them hate each other. I mean, the first 3 all hate each other. They're all left-wingers, but they all hate each other. oh yeah, of course, this guy who, if anyone knows, a horse. The horse-loving guy. I hate how I know this stuff. Oh, and of course, you have Hassan Piker's uncle. This is crazy.
13 accounts exceeds 80 million followers across all platforms. The campaign's primary advertising piece is a 90-second video that contrasts a homeless encampment in Skid Row with footage of Sergey Brin's super yacht. The video has been viewed over 47 million times across YouTube, Instagram.
That's what I find funny. What does him being a billionaire have to do with the homeless? The homeless is the homeless person's problem, not the billionaire's problem. If the homeless guy can't find a job, then he should find a way to do something for himself. Like that's the thing. There are a lot of people out there, there are some illegal immigrants that want to become legalized, but what they do for a living is they drive around and get paid out of pocket to mow people's lawns, clean up people's yards. It's a legit job for them. They're actually doing something so they don't remain homeless. That's what's funny is I don't get this like disconnect. You literally put that in a video to try and sympathize people. In my head, I'm like, why does the billionaire who got that point, what does he have to do with the homeless? What does he have to do with the homeless? And then the people who have signed agreements to like, oh yeah, we tax the billionaires, they're all multimillionaires. Why aren't they helping the homeless? The Hassan Pikers, the Ethan Kleins, the Destinies, the Chunk Yogurt, whatever his uncle's name is. Like, most of those are millionaires. Why aren't they helping the homeless? They have plenty of access cash that they could share. They should be assisting the billionaires. But no. As long as what's funny is as soon as the billionaires leave and they change the tax cutoff to being the millionaires, that had signed tax the billionaires, they're going to leave California. Just watch. They're going to leave California. They don't want to lose their money.
And TikTok. The opposition campaign has signed endorsement deals with Patrick Bet-David, the entrepreneur and podcaster who hosts the Valuetainment YouTube channel. Building a Better California has also signed deals with Joe Rogan, Flex Friedman, and Ben Shapiro. The opposition strategy is to flood YouTube and podcast feeds with documentary-style content focused on the EDD fraud, the high-speed rail collapse, and the homelessness spending failures. And fun fact, this channel is not one of them. I'm just personally pro-sound economics and anti-stupidity, but I'd love some free money. Just internal opposition polling indicates the
That's what's funny. I was all like, send me some money, send me some money.
Documentary content moves voters above the age of 50. The Yes campaign content moves voters under the age of 30. Both sides are essentially running entirely separate campaigns to entirely separate audiences. And then there's Newsom. In April 2026, the governor appeared on Bill Maher's HBO talk show. Maher pressed him on the billionaire tax. Newsom refused to take a clear position. Maher asked the question 3 times. And Newsom changed the subject 3 times. The clip went viral within 12 hours. Conservative commentators called it the death of Newsom's 2028 presidential campaign. Progressive commentators called it confirmation that Newsom had abandoned the Democratic base. Newsom called his communications team and asked them to stop booking him on shows where he might be asked about the tax, which I guess means he won't be coming on Financial Audit anytime soon. Beyond the campaigns, beyond the influencers, beyond the protests outside mansions that no longer belong to the people the protesters are protesting, there is one final layer of the story: the numbers. 214 California billionaires existed on January 1st, 2026 by the most reliable Forbes count. 6 publicly confirmed billionaires had departed before the cutoff. As many as 20 more departed in the 90 days following the cutoff, according to Los Angeles Times sources inside the Franchise Tax Board. By April 2026, Palliatia estimated that approximately $700 billion in personal wealth had moved out of California since the announcement of the measure. That figure represents over 5% of the entire pre-measure California billionaire wealth base. The campaign committee, Billionaire Tax Now, has raised approximately $84 million as of April 2026. Building a Better California, the opposition group, has raised over $80 million. Additional opposition committees, including the California Business Roundtable, have raised approximately $18 billion from donors including Peter Thiel and Chris Larson. The total amount of money committed to the campaign as of May 2026 already exceeds $200 million. By election day, the total will likely exceed $500 million. That makes the Billionaire Tax Act the most expensive ballot measure campaign in American history, exceeding even the 2020 Uber-Lyft Proposition 22 campaign, which previously held the record at $224 million. The Hoover Institution net loss projection sits at $25 billion over 10 years. The Tax Foundation effective rate analysis identifies individual founders facing rates above 100% of their actual annual income. The State Legislative Analyst Office cannot project the revenue with any meaningful confidence because the tax base is moving in real time. The LAO published a one-time conclusion in their analysis. Quote, the temporary increase in state revenues would be spread across several years beginning in 2027. The exact amount the state would collect is very hard to predict for many reasons. UC Berkeley economist Professor Enrico Moretti, who had spent 20 years studying the migration of high-income workers across state lines, has called the SEIU revenue projection, quote, way overly optimistic and warned the tax has, quote, the potential to completely destroy California's economy. And then there is the political logic of the situation. SEIU United Healthcare Workers West sponsored the measure to capture funding for the state's healthcare system. The union represents 120,000 healthcare workers across the state where hospitals are closing, where Medi-Cal reimbursement rates are falling, and where federal cuts to the program are pending. SEIU has a budgetary problem, and the legislator has refused to solve it through normal channels. The billionaire tax is the workaround. The question is whether a 5% wealth tax on 200 households is the correct tool to fix the problem. The international evidence says no. The Hoover analysis says no. The Tax Foundation analysis says no. Migration data says no. The 6 billionaires who have already left says no. The 20 additional billionaires who left in the 90 days after the deadline say no. $700 billion in capital flight says no. The 400 Pacific Heights protesters in 3-piece suits carrying Tax Me Last says no. The union, which knows all of this, says yes anyway. Saying yes is the only available political move that gets funding to the hospitals on the union's preferred timeline. The union does not need to win the argument on the merits. SEIU needs to win 51% of the vote on November 3rd. These are not the same thing. The vote is November 3rd, 2026. Polling currently shows the measure leading 56% to 38% with 6% undecided. 6 months of campaigning will narrow that gap. $300 million in opposition advertising will run in every market between Sacramento and San Diego between now and Election Day. The Yes campaign will respond with footage of private jets, footage of Brin's former mansions, and pictures of the homeless population that the new tax money is supposedly.
That's what's so funny. It's just like, I don't get it. People who worked hard, again, there is a nepotism that is involved in some things, but the fact that they're comparing the people who worked hard to the people who are a net negative on society, it's I don't get it. I don't get it. The funny thing is like, I know understand a bit more because my mother was in law enforcement and she had a ton of parolees, some of which the homeless people who stand on the side of the road asking for money, they're not homeless. They're not homeless. They pretend to be. Like, she had one who literally made a couple $1,000s at a week and then he'd drink it and smoke it away. But he'd still be able to pay his rent. He'd still be able to pay his rent. He went down and lived in like not a nice neighborhood, but he was able to pay his rent and then get in his car, drive to the area, right off the freeway, right on the down, and then he'd stand there with a sign out. Parking over at the hospital, walking to the section, and stand there with a sign out. Yeah, some of it is a gimmick. Some of it is mental illness. Some of it is like people who have literally need help. They have addictions and they need actual help. It's drug addictions, alcoholic addictions, all kinds of addictions that they need professional help with. But yeah, it's not a billionaire's responsibility to help an individual who's ruined their own life. It's not my responsibility to help an individual who's ruined their own life. If anything, we need to reopen institutions for locking up the people who are mentally unstable, and then maybe open up a few more rehab clinics to assist those who have literally just are in an induced psychosis.
Going to help. The measure may pass, it may fail. The outcome of the vote does not change the underlying mechanics of the underlying problem. The Golden State faces a structural budget deficit, an ongoing exodus of high-income earners, a public sector workforce that cannot be reduced through political negotiation, and the tax base concentrated in approximately 200 households that have already begun, in real time, to leave. The billionaire tax is the system, not the cause. The cause is 40 years of compounding political incentives that reward taxation over reform, that reward concentrated benefits over dispersed costs, and that reward is the language of fairness over the math of productivity. The billionaire tax is what those incentives produce in their final stage. The wealthy households respond to the incentives of the situation in front of them. The unions respond to the incentives of the situation in front of them. The governor responds to the incentives of the situation in front of him. The voters under the age of 30 respond to the incentives of the media environment they grew up in. All of them are running the math the system in front of them rewards. California built the modern technology industry. The state built Hollywood. Sacramento built the freeway system. The University of California and the agricultural powerhouse that feeds half of America. California produced more wealth, more innovation, and more cultural output than any subnational jurisdiction in the entire history of the world. The achievement is the largest in modern history. The decline, if the decline becomes permanent, will be the largest as well. Other states are watching. Other countries are watching. The wealthy households of California are a global test case for whether progressive taxation can survive in a world where capital is mobile, billionaires can move within 2 business days of notice, and 6 of the world's wealthiest people can change their tax residency in a single calendar week. Sergey Brin escaped the Soviet Union with 2 suitcases when he was 6 years old. He built one of the most valuable companies in human history. He paid taxes in the state of California for 27 consecutive years. He left in December of 2025, and he now lives in a $42 million mansion called Crystal Point on the Nevada side of Lake Tahoe, with 2 glass-enclosed funiculars running down to the lake. He commutes to the Google headquarters in Mountain View, California, every other week, a private jet as a non-resident. None of the federal taxes that were sold as temporary stayed temporary. The income tax.
The fact that he's willing to pay a private jet every week, the fuel, the pilots, everything, rather than pay, that just explains how much he would have to be paying, especially when it's a liquid form and they don't exactly have like they're just taxing on what they believe the person has rather than what the actual earnings of the person. Because a lot of these are what is it? Their liquidity and whatever. Like there's this solid hard cash, and then there's those which are in bonds, and they're getting taxed on all of it.
The alternative minimum tax, the phone excise tax. Each was promised as a narrow, single-purpose, time-limited measure. Each became permanent. Each expanded. California's voters will decide on November 3rd whether to repeat that history at the state level. Only a few months remain. The campaign will be the most expensive ballot fight in California history, and likely the most expensive in American history. Sergey Brin, Larry Page, and Peter Thiel have already left. So have Travis Kalanick, Don Hinckley, and Mark Zuckerberg. Pelapatia put the dollar number at $700 billion. The Hotel California clause says they cannot escape the bill. Constitutional scholars say the clause cannot survive a federal court. The trap is closed. It may not hold. On November 3rd, California will find out which of those 2 things is true, and I'll be there to cover it. I'll be candid.
Oof. Oh wait, it's doing a bit more.
Front Page loses money. The cost of research, audio editing, video editing, and everything else that goes into this project is substantial. I believe the neutral and factual perspective we bring to these topics are important in today's culture of endless misinformation.
Oh crap, that sucks. They lose money, but I enjoy it. It goes deep dive into things, especially because for me, I'm stuck here. but I'm able to have the disconnected perspective of like, well, my mother in law enforcement and knowing that kind of avenue of California, and then in literally Brown, like they showed Brown, but he had some policies which made honestly prisoners coming out have not be it's not treated as harshly, but not watched as much as they should have been. So they were allowed to go back into their life of crime because they weren't being surveilled as much as they should have been. But a lot of things kept happening, and it's just the over the time, it's just gotten worse and worse and worse here. And California is a beautiful, beautiful state. Absolutely. Of course, where I'm at right now, it's incredibly hot during the summer, very dry heat, but I'm just like an hour's drive away from Yosemite. I'm an hour's drive away from the beach. San Diego is considered like one of the most perfectly temperate locations in the world, like perfectly temperate, with like a mountain range right near it as well. So if you love to go up the mountains, and then the beach right there as well, like it's literally right there, 30 minutes away from each. Unlike where I'm at, it's like an hour. But yeah, it's just like there is beauty here. There absolutely is. But the beauty isn't worth staying in a state that robs me of everything I could possibly want to do in life. I mean, that's honestly why I enjoy doing like YouTube, because at least this gives me another avenue of some kind of earning. I'm basically at like what, $2 an hour? It's not a lot. It's not a lot, but it's something. It's something, and I enjoy doing this. Because I need as much as I can get. In order to continue on, in order to actually, maybe pay for food, maybe pay for one of my 4-legged children's food. I don't have enough from what I earn in my full-time job to actually, and I never want to get in debt. I've never taken out a credit card once in my life. I never want to get in debt. So I'm constantly paying paycheck by paycheck. What can I put into savings? What can I do here? Because I've understood what debt can derive from, what kind of problems it can cause. Because I saw my mother struggle with that. I saw my parents struggle with that. So it's just like, for me, I'm like, I want to avoid that kind of stuff. But it's funny how the state of California, even America in and of itself, is so willing to go into debt and pass the buck down the road. What happens when you get in debt? Well, you have to pay it off for the foreseeable future. And normally with interest. Why? Because you're having to pay off some of the compounding interest. And the fact that we've gotten so far down that rabbit hole as a state, so far down that rabbit hole as a nation. It's just continuing to snowball. When people shouldn't, like the United States shouldn't be a debt nation. Like, the only thing you should probably take a loan out for is a house. That's it. You should only ever have a loan on a house. You don't need to get a loan to get food. There are food banks if you can't afford food. You can literally go there and grab food off the shelf. They're there to be there for those who can't afford. There are programs in place for those who need certain things. Not the fact that some people can get food stamps or whatever the other terms are for like $1,000 when I can barely pay $200 a month for food, and that yet you can be incredibly obese, say you can't work because you're so obese that you're now allotted several $1,000s a month for food. And then you go and get the name brand stuff, the real expensive stuff, when I can barely pay like $200 a month. It's like, no. That's why it needs a massive overhaul. The entire system needs a massive overhaul. And we need to stop incurring debt. We need to stop it. People need to understand the consequences of it. And the problem is, a lot of people just see, oh, America's trillions of dollars in debt. California's billions of dollars in debt. It's no big deal. That's no big deal. So everyone just wants to emulate it, I guess. They just want to emulate it.
You guys got a video? Why is it so bad?
And don't forget to like and subscribe.
Why is it 아니라